Okay, if you look on 304, we see there are several different views of the correct relationship between corporations and social opinion. Okay, I'm talking here about the strategies of business response section towards the bottom of page 304. One response is to take no response to social change or to social opinion. Okay, when the social environment presents specific social demands to the firm and the firm's response is to do nothing. Another is to take a reactive response. The firm defends itself, gives arguments for its performance, and resists changing. If the pressure increases, the company might give in to change after a certain amount of resistance. There's also interactive. The firm accepts responsibility and presents a change of attitude in order to meet social demands. And then there's proactive. In this strategy, a business faces social issues before social demands arise. This is consistent with human excellence and a good business strategy, etc. Okay, so we have here a spectrum of responses, potential responses to social opinions. On one side, we have the do-nothing crowd, which says the business should not take the lead, as it were, on a particular social issue. Rather, it should bring up the rear and should either offer no response, not interact with the issue at all, or be reactive. And then on the other side, we have the proactive crowd, the crowd that says that business needs to take the lead when it comes to social opinion formation, because after all, business leaders are often just leaders as such in society. Let me ask you guys, you guys were all on the Zoom call. So Milton Friedman's shareholder-based view of the purpose of business, which holds that the purpose of business is to do what the owners desire, and in particular to make money, because that's what almost all owners desire. Which of these four responses do you think Friedman's view, the shareholder-based view of the purpose of business, would most favor? Think about it for a second. Would it be proactive or no response or somewhere in between? Okay. Why so, Daniel? Thank you.
Well, say like if you really try to get your main desire or your main purpose in the business is to make money.
Sure.
Whatever you do, say like if you do nothing, obviously they'll cause you like some kickback on you, whether it's like hurting your future business or basically it will hurt your future business because the reputation of the business will go bad. And if you take a proactive response, and you're gonna have to spend money to make money at that point.
Sure.
Or usually like that. It might not be like that, but sometimes it can be like that. So I would say probably somewhere between where you can keep the cost or where like you're spending in the business to the minimum and then get the max profit out of it.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. As I understand Friedman's view, I would suspect that he would tend towards the reactive side of the spectrum. Maybe even no response. But certainly I would think the reactive side. And the reason why is because for Friedman, the job of the business is just to make money, right? It's not to try to form social opinion, to get out in front on some social issue. After all, you don't want to alienate customers. And the more customers you can have, the more money you can make. In fact, most American business tends to be reactive or to follow the no response line. Not all, but most American business does that. And it's for the reasons that I just cited. It's because they don't want to alienate customers. They want to cast as wide a net as possible in terms of customer appreciation or involvement or welcoming the customer, etc. And if they take social stances, they tend to offend people, and they don't want to do that. Okay, so if 70% of the population has a particular view on things, and 30% doesn't, you might find businesses bringing up the rear and taking that particular view on something because 70% holds that view. And they think, well, that's enough customers, we can afford to offend a few. Okay, but you will rarely see American businesses take a social stance when 30% of the population holds that stance, because they tend not to want to alienate others who could potentially be a part of their customer base. Okay, so most American businesses in practice actually do follow the Friedman line and the shareholder view, and they don't take a proactive approach to social issues. Okay, there are two businesses that I want us to look at today. Okay, and I'm going to look at one right now, and then we're going to take a break, and we're going to look at a second. Okay, and these two businesses both are run by management teams that tend to see things a bit differently than the reactive or the no response views would hold. Okay, so let's go ahead and get that set up here. Most class sessions going forward are going to have a theory component and a practice component, like I said in the Zoom call, because this is a theory and practice hybrid class. Okay, why is this not? Did it turn off? Does it shut off after a period of time? Let us try again. It's on? The green light. It probably hibernates after a period of time, so I'm going to have to struggle. It's always a struggle. The tech in the classroom is always a man versus beast struggle. Okay, here we go. Come on. No input. Fair enough. Oh, Dr. Neal, I must remember to do this each time. Okay. Give me a minute. We're almost there. We are there. Okay, so Target. Everyone has shopped at Target, yes? Okay, good. Target has as its main competitors Walmart and Amazon. Okay, Target makes its money from people who don't want to shop at Walmart. Right? Because they sell the same stuff.
They have high quality stuff, but they are more expensive.
It's okay, it is some of the stuff is higher quality. And the stores are better organized, I'll give you that. The employees are more knowledgeable, the stores are better organized. Okay, so there is that. At the same time, though, I think at the end of the day, they build their business model on people's unwillingness to shop at Walmart. Okay, the company's mission statement espouses a commitment to serving all people. The company focuses on diversity and inclusion and has a long-standing commitment to philanthropy. Okay, so they've been very involved in their community, doing lots of charitable projects over the years. Company prioritizes diversity in its hiring practices. Here's a quote from their website. As champions of diversity and inclusivity, we're making our business stronger, building our talented team, and working toward a more equal society. Another website quote, we believe diversity and inclusivity make teams and Target better, and we'll live that belief as champions of a more inclusive society by creating a diverse and inclusive work environment, cultivating an inclusive guest experience, and fostering equality in society. Okay, very grandiose kinds of statements, but let's look at what that means in practice. This is a famous issue that happened about 3 years ago. Okay, Target sees itself as attempting to balance an appropriate customer experience for persons who support alternative sexual views, that is, identify as LGBTQIA+, as well as for persons who support classical sexual views. This is the company's initial policy change. Okay, so originally the company had standard bathroom practices, and they changed their policies. This is the first policy change. They altered their bathroom policy to allow persons to enter the bathroom of the gender with which they identified, regardless of anatomy. Okay? Here's Target's reasoning. In our stores, we demonstrate our commitment to an inclusive experience in many ways. Most relevant for the conversations currently underway, we welcome transgender team members and guests to use the restroom or fitting room facility that corresponds with their gender identity. Okay, there was a big backlash that happened almost immediately. There was widespread outcry over possible dangers to women in women's restrooms, 1.2 million signatures on a petition against Target. The company was especially boycotted by moms with young kids. My wife said she was never going to set foot in a Target again. She has not done so since that time. There were several cases of men who had been Target customers and who were caught recording women undressing in changing rooms. Boycotters asked that the store's policy be changed so that transgender customers and employees no longer be allowed into the bathroom and dressing rooms of their choice. There were financial consequences as well. Shortly after Target's inclusive bathroom policy announcement, their stock price fell about 18% or so. There was a further 18% drop in shares within 7 weeks. Overall, the announcement of the policy change caused shareholders to lose about $10 billion. Okay, maybe this is relevant. Target is a public company. Its owners are public shareholders. Okay? Target is not held by a family group. It is not a private company. During the quarter in which the policy change was announced, the company also experienced a 7% drop in sales, although this may have been due in part to competition from Amazon. Okay, so yeah, the boycott might not have been the sole cause of that. The move towards online retail purchases, which was already happening back then and then was accelerated by COVID. COVID sort of gave the victory to Bezos. But anyway, it brought that about. Okay, so Target changed their policy. Again, Target's solution was to change its policies and to incorporate single-stalled or private bathrooms that lock in all of its U.S. stores. It has cost Target about $100 million to do this. Okay, so alongside their other restrooms, they've now got in all their stores single-stall or private bathroom arrangements. Target aspires to be a welcoming, comfortable, and safe space for all shoppers. It also aspires to support the LGBT movement. What should the company do? Does the fact that Target is a publicly owned company make a difference in the social stances it ought to take? Okay, so let us talk a little bit about this case. What do you guys think? Let me ask you a couple of these questions, just for your opinions. Let's ask the last one first. Does the fact that Target is a publicly owned company make a difference in the social stances it ought to take? And then we'll move on to the next to last question about what the company should do in this case and what companies in general should do about this the restroom issue. But what do we think about the publicly owned nature of Target? Does that or does it not make a difference in whether they should take social stances? Drew says yes. Okay, why so?
Because you have an obligation to your shareholders who are affected by your decisions.
Okay, they lose money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't want your shareholders to lose money or else they're going to pull out, and then that hurts your company's own financials, which you definitely don't want. So, and then you don't want to have to fire employees because you don't have enough money to pay them.
Sure.
So overall, you want to make sure you hold on to shareholders.
Okay, so because of the obligations that management has to owners, employees, and others affiliated with the business, by virtue of this being a publicly owned company, they ought to be less, less proactive when it comes to these kinds of issues. Okay, all right. Anybody else on the public nature of the company question? If Target were family owned, would that be a difference maker in this issue? By the way, I personally think management should be able to do as they please. I'm not sure it's best business practices for them to treat shareholders this way. But strictly speaking, I think that they should be able to do as they please. I'm a customer, though, and I don't have to shop there. And I have not shopped there. As a result of this, I'm a social conservative on these things. But at the same time, I would go to the mat to defend Target's management's right to run their stores as they please. But the question, I think Drew would probably agree with me, it's not as though they should be prohibited from doing that by any means, by some sort of shareholder contract. Rather, it's more like it's best practices for them not to treat shareholders that way. Okay, all right, fair enough. Others on the public nature of the company issue? What about the restroom issue in general? What's the solution here going forward for all businesses? You guys can just weigh in. I know that there are really different views on this.
Probably have a family bathroom.
Okay,
You know, the one that you can lock.
right, okay. Have it everywhere. Isabella?
In some places, they have like a gender neutral bathroom. I guess like in the same thing as you said, just like where you can lock it.
Okay,
That way it's like safer.
okay, all right, yep, good. Others? We had this issue actually in Houston not too long ago. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. We had to vote on it. I think probably the only ultimate solution for the society and for businesses on this particular issue is individual bathrooms for everybody. I think that's probably the only solution to make everybody happy. That way no one is discriminated against, no one's hated on. Everybody just goes, I know it like increases the individualism in America, and like we're already a rampantly individualistic society. But when you can't agree on anything, I mean, you got to find a solution. So, I don't know. Okay, good. All right, so that is one company. It is a progressive company, a left-leaning company when it comes to issues of social involvement. We will turn after the break. We're going to take a 2 or 3 minute break, and we'll turn to a right-wing company, a conservative company on issues of social involvement, Chickfila, and we'll look at a controversy surrounding that. You guys take a 2 or 3 minute break, stand up, stretch your legs. You can go out if you want for a minute, and we will reconvene momentarily.
What's that? I'm a second year you.
Hey, Dan, this is your sweatshirt. Is that your high school?
Excited.
Yes, sir.
Do you live on
Is
campus?
that local or is that Illinois?
Illinois.
Oh, went to mine? Okay.
We, right?
I did.
Yeah, mine was a Western Mass.
Okay.
I live on
It's just
campus,
down
yeah,
the
my
street
family's
now.
back in
Okay, but you got the
I go back
sweatshirt.
almost
Yes,
2
sir.
months.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's like,
What's that?
it's like, you know how like HBU has the academy?
I mean, I liked it, yeah, my roommate
But
was
yeah.
able to
they
come
used
back
to be
this semester,
together,
so I'm by
but
myself, which is
separated
sweet.
now.
Oh, sure.
I mean, like, I was,
Well, they used to
I
have
know.
campus when I was
I know, I
there.
felt bad, because like, she's one of my closest friends, so I was like, of course I miss her, but at the same time, I was like,
2000.
I mean, I'm happy.
It's a blessing that you can get them.
I know.
know.
That's what I'm saying, I was like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, they.
I have my
think
time,
they
so I don't
moved to
care, but
their own
I mean, yeah,
location
it's nice.
outside of West Chicago, like,
exactly. Yeah, this is true. What's your major again?
708, something like that.
Okay, sure, sure.
But, well,
So do the students at Wheaton still come and teach and stuff?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I've had at least like 4 or
I wanna
5
teach, so I'm
college
hoping to
like
go to grad
education
school.
majors.
But grad school's expensive.
That's
so
totally
we'll see
cool,
if
man.
I can get a
You're like the
fellowship.
first person I've met down here. I've been in Houston now for nearly 10 years. You're the first person who's got like a Wheaton college connection like that.
You're the first person I've met that actually went to college. It's been 5 years that I've been here, so.
Sure. No, that's cool, man. I'm glad you wore that sweatshirt today.
Yeah.
I know, what's funny is like there's some
Real
people that
quick,
post
do
something,
you
I'm like,
happen to remember Dave Meyer?
where's your brain? Like,
Do I remember who?
Dave Meyer?
I do, yes.
She is not my
were married to
like
Jay?
very wealthy, like white mom.
He's a
Like,
wonderful,
you're like,
wonderful
you're so
woman.
mean and you're so stupid.
I was like, I need to take business ethics.
It's not a joke,
Very
though.
McNally.
They're
She's
so
like,
unkind,
"Dr.
they're
Crow."
like-
I'm like, yeah, she's like, take it.
What is wrong with you? What that works? I have like this.
No, Jane's really cool. I love Jane.
Oh, yeah. I love her too.
I hope she's doing well.
She is.
It's like, why are you
She's working
yelling
on
at
second
me?
degree.
Like, I'm too tired for
Bitch.
this. I don't own this puppy. I know the best is like, can I speak to the manager? I'm like, that's me.
Okay,
So,
so
what do you-
I am the manager.
Is she trying to get in the trailer or is she?
She's trying to get into the trailer for another degree.
She's trying to get
Like,
in.
don't talk to me.
She graduated with visual languages master's here.
What does she want to get her other masters in?
It's so
Sorry?
fun.
What does she want to get this other masters in?
She's
Food
like
service
about like
is
a
cool.
speech
Like, I feel like they can take
pathologist.
missions, like,
Okay,
sorry
cool.
missions or there.
That's cool.
Next
Yeah,
time
she
I'll
knows
do-
the details.
Sweet.
That's not a problem.
It's okay.
Good, man. Well, you made a good choice, man. You married wisely.
Yeah.
You know, that's what all of my former students should do. They should just ask the students, like, former professors. And we know all the dirt. Like, we know who's on time with their assignments and who can be trusted and who can't be. And, you know, like, they should just ask for references. Like, it would be so much easier and more clinical instead of all this love thing. Just, like, ask for okay, let's move on. Okay.
So do you have a side gig making like matchmaking or something like that?
Oh, I could totally do a side gig as a matchmaker for my students. You wouldn't trust me as a matchmaker for you?
I will not trust most people.
I don't have
Wow.
issues.
I was gonna say, I was like,
Trust issues.
You know, throughout most of human history, not in the last couple hundred years, but throughout most of human history, people didn't make their own choices when it came to who they married.
You do know it's still like that in
make your own
China, right?
choices in general.
That's true. But I mean, like, you know, I'm going to choose for my daughters. I'm going to choose. No, I'm joking. Okay.
It's like we will like him.
I definitely know better than they do what's good for them right now. That is true.
Aren't they like 5'3" and 1?
They are 5, 3, and 1,
They
yes.
shouldn't be dating.
Actually, my 5-year-old seems to have a little boyfriend.
Oh.
I don't know how this happened. Like, this is.
Do they go on play dates?
They well, she talks constantly about him,
So yes.
and she doesn't want to play with the other kids. She just wants to play with him.
So yes.
And yesterday when I dropped her off, she usually gives me a little goodbye hug and a peck on the cheek, right? And she goes, "Bye, Dad," because she saw him like off the distance. She like takes off, and I didn't get a hug. It's like I got jilted. Okay.
All boys are evil.
I know, at 5 years old. Okay, Chick-fil-A. Adriana will give us all the inside specs on this. And Drew can as well. They have a reputation for being fairly ethical in their treatment of their employees. Fairly. Okay, now I should give a caveat there. Fast food in general has a very bad reputation in terms of employee treatment. So, for instance, I was reading an article about McDonald's not too long ago. And, yeah, so McDonald's is actually heavily subsidized by the American taxpayer because a large percentage of McDonald's employees are on welfare because they don't pay them enough to have a living wage and be able to sustain their, basic necessities. So, as an American taxpayer, you're helping McDonald's out by bankrolling their employee list.
Nice.
It's my favorite.
That's what I wanted to hear.
But Chick-fil-A has a reputation for being fairly ethical. They were founded in the early 1960s by Truett Cathy. He invented the boneless chicken breast sandwich. They currently have 2,000 locations, privately held, family-owned by the Cathy family. They come out of Atlanta. This is an Atlanta-based company, most famous for their original chicken sandwich. Every semester, I always pledge I will not be going to the campus Chick-fil-A this semester, and every semester I fail at that because it's just so good. Like, it's really, really good. Okay, and I know it is clogging my arteries. I know that it is causing me to have, fewer years with my grandchildren in the future. Like, I'm aware of this, and I choose them anyway. Okay, licensed non-traditional outlets. They have an established licensing program to enable licensees to serve Chick-fil-A food in settings such as college campuses, hospitals, airports, and business and industry locations. Okay, so they have this franchise system thing. That's the way we have Chick-fil-A here at HBU. Okay, look at this corporate purpose. This is not the corporate purpose of a publicly owned and traded company. To glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that is entrusted to us and to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. Pretty clearly a parochial corporate purpose as a result of this being a private company held by the Cathy family. They are famous for being closed on Sundays. They've also beaten, though, many other fast food restaurants in revenue for many years. They are really popular. Like, their locations are crazy popular. I don't know what they're doing, but maybe it's that special, what is it, like peanut grease that they're putting, the peanut oil? Yeah? Well, I don't know, whatever. Grease, oil. Well, what does go on at Chick-fil-A?
A lot. A lot.
Do I want to know?
Oh, I could explain the entire back of house.
Okay, well, we'll say that for another time.
It's not that bad.
Okay. All right, well, that's good.
They make you do lemons for 3 hours and you end up getting boiled on your arm because it starts to,
Whoa.
the acid juice gets in.
Acid juice gets into your arms?
It's not great.
Dude, just litigate, man. Then you don't have to, like, place bets through Wall Street bets. Like, you
Oh,
could just,
no.
like, take it from the Cathy
No,
family.
because you see the managers were all like, oh, that's exactly what happened to me. And then they-
Class action, man. Class action. You should listen to me.
No, but they're the ones that were encouraging me to keep going.
I see. I see. Okay,
It doesn't matter too much. I know.
they have a reputation for being substantial community givers. For instance, they give millions to serve children and families in need in America's inner cities. Okay, they give out lots of scholarships for their employees' education. They do a lot of after-school programs, sports programs in Atlanta for disadvantaged youth. Again, Atlanta is their home base. They give lots of sandwiches to organizations treating sick or special needs children. They donate sandwiches for natural disaster cleanup efforts, military, foster homes. Let's move on. Let's get to the controversial bit. Okay, same-sex marriage controversy. In 2012, the CEO, Dan Cathy, publicly made statements regarding same-sex marriage. He stated that he was against same-sex marriage, and this caused controversy. Supporters of same-sex marriage felt unwelcome at the restaurants, and many people were uncomfortable giving their business to Chick-fil-A. Others went out and bought more Chick-fil-A as a result of Cathy's statements. Okay, so there were like dueling Chick-fil-A days. Okay, so like the LGBTQ community would go in and they'd like make out at Chick-fil-A but not buy anything just to make people uncomfortable. And then like the next Saturday, all the evangelicals would come in and like buy, 4 more sandwiches than they really needed just to make Chick-fil-A profitable. Okay. It's a controversial company. Okay, so Cathy decided that public donations to nonprofit organizations would help the company withstand the negative attention. He also reported that the company had no anti-homosexual policy and that he would continue just to, quote, sell chicken. Cathy did not change his views, but he made it public that the company had nothing against same-sex couples eating at Chick-fil-A. Here are 3 questions for you guys to think about. 3 questions to crystallize this particular case study. Should CEOs be able to say what they want about controversial social issues? CEOs are closely associated with their companies. Does this make them company spokespersons by definition? Or can their status as individual citizens be separated from their company role? Right, so they play a role that is different than the role that you and I play. They are individual citizens like us, but they also play a kind of a status symbol role as company spokespersons. Do your views about proper CEO behavior and speech change based on whether the company is a public company, that is public shareholders, or a private company that is family owned? Let's go back to the top. Should CEOs be able to say what they want about controversial social issues? What do we think? Okay, yes.
Private company.
Freedom of speech.
Private company, freedom of speech. As individuals, they own the company, yes. The Cathy family owns the company. Well, let me press you guys. You guys are all saying they should be able to say whatever they want. What about the employees, right? Maybe it's privately owned, but don't they have obligations to their employees? And maybe some of those employees have fewer work opportunities going forward after they leave Chick-fil-A or whatever, by virtue of the fact that they worked at Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A has a reputation for being socially conservative. Okay, now I'm just trying to press you guys and say, look, there are other stakeholders besides the owners who are involved. What do you guys think? So maybe as individual citizens, CEOs can say whatever they want, but what about as qua CEO, in their role as CEO? Does that make them company spokespersons, and should they behave differently? What do we think?
The service you take as an employee is that the company you work for may become very controversial and that may damage your work opportunities. So that's something that you take into account when you apply.
Okay, well said. Thank you, Brooke. Others? I actually happen to agree with that.
Can another company deny you a job based on your previous workplace being Chick-fil-A?
Not officially, but in practice it happens all the time. But no, not officially. That would be
So
discrimination.
if they were to do that and you were to find out, you could file a lawsuit.
Of course, but they never put that in writing. An important thing about the American legal system that you must understand is if it's in writing, it's not important. The important stuff is never put in writing. Okay, what do we think about this third question? Do your views about proper CEO behavior and speech change based on whether the company is a public company or a private company?
For sure.
Okay, they do, all right. Others? Deontay, what do you think, man? Okay. Okay, sure, good. Now, Target did make a policy change, and Chick-fil-A's CEO was just talking. So maybe that's a little different, but both of them had negative effects. Okay, when Chick-fil-A opened not too long ago, just before COVID, a couple of locations in Manhattan, the mayor of New York, de Blasio, tried to organize a boycott and said, we don't want Chick-fil-A here. And they had the biggest openings that they had had of any locations ever because he had called attention to them. For some reason, America, I guess when it comes to like things that products Americans really want, we're unable to organize boycotts because like we just want the product, we can't control ourselves. But you know, okay, good. Last thoughts on this. What do you guys think about CEO behavior?
Yeah, I don't think it matters either, because you do you and just take responsibility of the consequences.
Okay.
You are CEO of the public company and you go bankrupt because everyone is not buying your stuff anymore, and that's your fault. And same thing for private company. If people are boycotting, then that's your fault. But it can happen the other way, whereas you said something great. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Burger King says like, we are doing plant-based burgers, and people are like, yay, and they start buying Burger King stocks. Good job, CEO. And I mean, I think it's just you do your best as your role, and
So he says, do your best as CEO, and you'd have a pretty hands-off view of what the CEO can do. Just let the CEO do whatever the CEO wants to do.
that's just whether it's public or private, I don't think it matters.
Doesn't matter. Okay. All right. Interesting. Good. I personally think that the CEOs should be able to say whatever they want. But again, probably best practices suggests they shouldn't, out of prudence, always say whatever they want. But again, they ought to be able to say whatever they want.
You can say whatever you want, but you just need a really, really good PR team.
Fair enough. You can't just tweet off the cuff like Elon Musk.
No, or based on a former president that has really good filter.
Fair enough. Well said. there was all this to do about Twitter stopping his account, and I thought to myself, I think it's probably the biggest favor they could possibly have done the man, is to shut his Twitter account down.
He spends more time on Twitter than all men in the whole country, so
Right, yeah.
he's addicted. He's helped.
Hey, yeah. Well, he's just emblematic of Americans in general. Okay, let us go to page 330. We have 5 more minutes. We are going to do one last topic. We're going to talk about corporate citizenship. This is our third topic for the day. Okay, so it might be useful when thinking of corporate citizenship to think of it in terms of concentric circles. And if I commend that illustration to you, I'll just put it up here on the board for those of you who don't have the book in front of you. So there are certain duties or responsibilities in terms of corporate citizenship that might be considered primary. Others are secondary. And still others are tertiary. Okay, and primary duties are duties that you should do in the way you run your business. Like, it's pretty much non-negotiable. You're a really immoral business if you don't do primary duties. Okay, so primary responsibilities at the top of page 331 refer to the duties of strict justice towards people. Okay, primary responsibilities are, among many others, respecting human rights, honoring contracts, labeling products with accurate and relevant information, avoiding fraud, having compliance with fair laws, providing clear, honest annual reports and financial statements, etc. Again, primary responsibilities are responsibilities that businesses must do in order to meet the very minimum requirements of basic morality. It might be useful to think of these concentric circles in terms of 2 categories that ethicists, here's my philosopher angle coming in, ethicists use to think about human responsibilities. Okay, some actions that we humans do might be considered obligatory. Other actions might be considered supererogatory. Obligatory actions and supererogatory actions. What do I mean by that? Well, an obligatory action is an action that you as a human being must do, according to ethicists. My children are 5, 3, and 1. I must feed them. If I choose not to feed them, all of us in this room would condemn me as a horrible, horrible human being for starving my children. Okay? However, my children will not always be 5, 3, and 1. Suppose some 10 years from now, my 5-year-old, now 15, comes to me, and I'm sitting there on the couch, and I'm watching Netflix, or whatever the equivalent is at that time. Probably won't be Netflix. And she says, Daddy, I need help with my math homework. Okay, and I'm tired. I've had a long day dealing with HBU students. No, I'm joking. Okay, I've had a long day, right? And I say, babe, you solve it yourself. I just don't feel like it. Okay? We might say I am not being a very good parent, but we would not say, I think in such a situation, that I am doing something that is deeply immoral. Correct? Because the obligation is not as strong, it is more of a supererogatory action. Okay, a supererogatory action is an action that you are not obligated to do, but that you still should do. Okay, I probably should help my daughter with her homework, but I'm not obligated like I am to feed her when she's 5 years old. Think of a supererogatory action in this way. All may do it, none must do it, most should do it. All may, none must, most should. Okay, and if we look at the secondary and tertiary responsibilities that are listed here, they have more of a supererogatory nature rather than an obligatory nature. Okay, all may, none must, most should. That's certainly true of tertiary responsibilities and to some extent secondary responsibilities as well. What are secondary responsibilities? Well, they include things like giving employees the necessary training to maintain their employability, keeping regular suppliers informed of developments inside the company, responding quickly to customer complaints, right? If they've got bad customer service, it's not as though they are an immoral company, it's just that they're not a very good company. Okay, maintaining an active dialogue with primary stakeholders, etc. And tertiary responsibilities are even more peripheral. They include things like, well, I'm not sure if some of these are tertiary. At any rate, hiring disabled people, fostering family values, promoting women's rights, fighting against discrimination, integrating immigrant workers, supporting universities. Some of those seem more important than tertiary. I'm not sure. Okay, at any rate, though, this might be a useful decision-making metric as you think of your business and its social involvements. And as you make those difficult decisions about allocating the finances, there's only so much to go around. And as you think about what's primary, what's secondary, and what's tertiary in terms of your responsibilities. Okay, I'll have more to say on that next time. You guys will not be here next time, so watch the video. Are there any questions or comments so far, though?
Oh, I do.
Yes, Sophie.
Wait, so what is the best way to study for an exam?
What is the best way to study for an exam? Many, many hours.
Well, many hours, like,
If you're doing more than 35 hours for my exams, that's probably a little too much.